the Magic are all about defense. The offense got to get better. The Mavericks made the NBA Finals off an elite defensive performance in a run, but they opted to improve their offense even further by acquiring Klay Thompson. There's been a lot of mixed reviews on this. Some people think Klay Thompson is washed and he's not worth acquiring for the Mavericks. He doesn't make them that much better. Fun fact, he was 31st in PER amongst all shooting guards. He's now wearing number 31 in Dallas because of Reggie Miller. It's going to look odd seeing him wear number 31.
Really odd.
But Riv, you've seen him play on Golden State. You are higher on Dallas now. How much better do you think the Mavericks are with Klay, and what version do you expect of Klay on the Mavs?
Well, to understand how Klay impacts the team, you got to understand how he was used in Golden State. And I think, there were times where I shitted on him for sure. There was times when I hated on him. There was times where I was visibly frustrated at the shit he used to do. But I also understood situations that he was our number 2 guy. Yeah. And that's not his role anymore. That's not, he just doesn't have that in him anymore. And it's okay, Father Time catches up to everybody except fucking LeBron, which is aggravating. But for sure, I think Klay, you got to understand, Dallas pretty much was teetering at the deadline, made some moves, brought in 2 guys, P.J. Washington, Daniel Gafford, that brought into their playoff rotation. Their rotation consisted of about 8-9 strong, right? And, they had spot minutes with Tim Hardaway Jr., Dante Exum. Klay's going to take those total minutes. Klay is much better than those guys. Like, Klay is a legitimate guy on the team where he's a 3rd or 4th guy, a guy that can come off a pin down. He can run a little bit of DHOs, not too much. He can hit off the catch extremely well. He can still defend 3 to 4s, sometimes 5s. His switchability is fine. Guards he'll have trouble with, of course. But, Dallas builds a pretty great defensive scheme. He'll be fine. What he provides is what Dallas struggled with pretty much all playoffs, consistent shooting. They had the series against OKC where P.J. Washington was God, and he was shooting a high, insane clip. But for the most part, in totality of the series, they lacked consistent three-point shooting. And I think Klay Thompson brings that. And I think he can, bring that different element of high shot making and, elite three-point shooting. He still shot a 38, 39% clip this year. He's still an elite shooter. And I think, the image of him in Golden State was him as a number 2, and it was hard to watch, of course. That team was just bad. But him going to now Dallas, where Luka is an all-time playmaker. Kyrie's a pretty good playmaker. You have ways where you can set up Klay Thompson to get the ball. He can score, transition shoot, and he'll be there for that. I think Klay, why I'm high on Dallas, because I thought they improved on everything they needed to improve, and they upgraded on the position they needed to upgrade, and Klay was a big part of that.
This contract to me is going to be one of the best in the NBA. 3 years, $50 million for Klay Thompson is just a little bit more than what Doug McDermott's making for 3 years, $42 million. And as you highlighted very well just now, Klay is going to be a huge upgrade off what they've previously had because he's essentially replacing Tim Hardaway Jr., who was a liability for them. He could not play in the playoffs whatsoever. And with Thompson, he is the perfect fit alongside Luka, who, it's going to be a lot more ISO heavy, but can Klay add more movement shooting with Jason Kidd having the opportunity to really reinforce that into his offense? In the corner, Luke is going to hit him in the shooting pocket again and again and again, and it's going to open up the floor in ways that really haven't had that gravity. Defensively, I worry quite a bit, and that would be my one concern with this move, just because of the fact he cannot guard a point guard. But I think adding guys like Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, who could start. Klay's only making about $16 million annually. That is what a 6-man often makes in today's NBA. It doesn't force Dallas to put him in a really tough position on the defensive end. It gives him the flexibility to start him in some series and in some of the good matchups, but in the bad ones for him, he can be a 6-man of the year candidate. And quite frankly, I think it's the best thing for both parties.
I feel like this has been the most overthought move where people are trying to nitpick at everything that's wrong with it when it's a no-brainer. It's clear. It makes the Dallas Mavericks so much better. And in a world where we live in, where everybody, they want to see a new team reach the NBA Finals, the Dallas Mavericks, a team that made the NBA Finals just now, got so much better to the point that they can make the NBA Finals again. I love the offseason OKC has had. Bringing in Caruso, bringing in Hartenstein. But this is the harsh reality of OKC's future. in order for them to take a finals leap, it's not SGA who has to improve. It's Chet Holmgren. It's Jalen Williams. They have to take major steps in a short amount of time in this window where the Mavericks, with Luka Doncic playing at all NBA level, with Kyrie Irving being in his prime, with Klay Thompson still being a very good player, and he still can be a pivotal part of a championship team. They have veteran experience, legitimate veteran experience. And I think when you talk about OKC and Dallas and a potential rematch in the playoffs, if they were to meet again, I think that experience matters. I think that big game experience from Kyrie, from Luka, from Klay Thompson, it matters more because OKC doesn't have that type of experience. We can talk all about, okay, OKC didn't shoot well in the playoffs. Well, who were the players that didn't shoot well? Lou Dort, who teams are going to leave open, and he's going to be a pivotal part of OKC. Who else didn't shoot well? Cason Wallace, a rookie who they were relying on. Chet Holmgren didn't shoot well from three. These are young guys that have not been battle tested in the playoffs, and I don't think one playoff run where you won one first round series now makes you battle tested. They have experience, but is it enough experience to make the NBA Finals? That is still a TBD. But the Mavericks have a veteran and experienced team, and adding Klay Thompson, a guy who knows how to win and knows how to get it done, is huge. And people don't even talk about the fact that in that playoff series against OKC, Luka Doncic, outside of Game 5 and Game 6, did not play like Luka. In Games 1 to 4, he was clearly a shell of himself. Kyrie Irving averaged 17 points per game. You can say PJ Washington was great, and he averaged 19, but now you're adding a guy in Klay who can legitimately average 18, and on any given night could rain in 5 threes. And the game plan OKC used against Kyrie, which was to really double him and to get the ball out of his hands. Well, now it's going to be much harder when Klay Thompson's on the court because you got to respect his spacing, because OKC didn't respect Derrick Jones Jr. or PJ spacing whatsoever. So I think just because OKC made these major moves, I don't think it just pushes Dallas over and they're not in the mix. I think as of right now, Dallas is still probably the favorite. And you might say, well, it's not often we see a team go back to the NBA Finals, but it's not often where a team that just made the NBA Finals has a top 3 player in the world and they improved. Like Luka Doncic is in the same stratosphere, in my opinion, in terms of a talent, all-time talent, as somebody like LeBron James. And when LeBron James had a team around him, he was able to make the finals year after year after year. And I think Luka is that special of a player. I understand LeBron is a better defender. I understand LeBron is a better defender, but I don't think it's crazy to say Luka can make back-to-back finals and this time around get it done and get over the hump.
I just feel like you could have left LeBron out of it, but do your thing.
But I'm just saying, this team got so much better. Klay averaged 18, 39% from three, 39% above the break, 38% catch and shoot, 41% on pull-up shots. And yes, he adds movement shooting to this team. He adds a dimension of off-ball ability to this team. But I think what's even more important for him, and when we talk about the Mavs adjusting their play style to Klay, I think it's more so Klay adjusting his play style to Dallas. Does Klay Thompson, if he is at this age, does he want to move around a ton of screens and get shots off the catch? I feel like he's fine with playing in a corner, playing on a wing, letting Kyrie and Luka go to work, and him getting easy shots. We're talking about Klay saving so much energy on offense because he doesn't have to move around at the level he did at Golden State. And I love what you mentioned about Klay's defense, because Klay defense is not, he can't guard those shiftier guards anymore, but he can guard positions up. So in a series, if they were to rematch the Boston Celtics, he could guard Jaylen Brown. He can guard Jason Tatum. He can, with his size, that is a good matchup for Dallas. And I'm not saying he's locking him up, but I'm saying
I'm laughing at John.
I think Klay Thompson against JB and JT might be a better defender than Derrick Jones Jr. was, because Derrick Jones Jr. let up a lot on the size department because he was skinny and he was frail. And I think Klay, he can guard those positions up. And when we talk about the teams in the Western Conference, I mean, how many teams that they're going to face in a playoff run have shifty guards that Klay has to worry about overwhelmingly. You look at OKC, SGA is shifty. He's not fast, twitchy like a John Morant by any means. He's more so just crafty. And even then, he gave Dallas 31 a night in the playoffs, so he cooked them regardless. The Denver Nuggets, they didn't face them, but I think more so their problem is going to lie in the Jokic matchup against Minnesota. Minnesota has not improved their spacing this offseason. And the way Dallas played them on defense is going to be the same way they would play them again in the series. Then who else? The Suns. They don't got a shifty guy like that who can really just just twitchy.
The Suns would be a problem for them matchup wise because they don't have a Dallas doesn't have a lot of great one-on-one defenders. Yeah. But I think Dallas will still win though.
Yeah, I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that when we talk about shiftier guards, I don't think in the playoffs Klay is really going to be asked to guard down all that much. And if you do run into a team like Memphis, I think Memphis's lack of size in the backcourt works to the advantage of Dallas because now Luka gets to pick apart certain matchups and gets to play against smaller defenders. So if you're putting a player that's shiftier on the court to knock Klay off his defensive game, well, now that could backfire because now Luka on the other side can pick you apart. So I think this move was a great move. Their rotation now is Luka, Kyrie, Klay, PJ, Derek Lively. Off the bench, Najee Marshall, Daniel Gafford. That's going to be their first two. Dante Exum was really good for them. Quentin Grimes, we'll see if he can find his stride again. And Maxi Kleber, I still think he's a very serviceable player. And being able to still keep Maxi Kleber without involving him in any trade, I think is huge because he had a shoulder injury in these playoffs. And it showed in the finals because he couldn't shoot at all. Mm-hmm. But he was still a good defender.
I think it's over for him as a rotation player, I'll be honest.
Listen, I wouldn't disagree with you, John. Listen, he was really underwhelming. But wide open three-point percentage in the finals, I always use this stat. The Mavericks starters were 17.6%. They shot 17.6%, while the Celtics starters shot 42.6%. And yes, we can argue about defensive schemes all day long, but the point of the matter was that the Dallas Mavericks were just missing open three-point shots. That's really what it was. Mm-hmm. And Luka wasn't hitting his three-point shots, and that didn't help. And Kyrie wasn't hitting his either. I do think that even though the Celtics won in 5, and I always stand on this, is the series was much closer, and Dallas got cold at the worst time possible in the season.
Yeah. I think there's two more things to this I want to add. The first thing is I think you're looking at Klay with rose-colored glasses defensively because you said you wouldn't really be worried about him on defense. In the Mavericks closing lineup, if he's going to be on that floor with Kyrie and Luka Doncic, the question becomes who's going to guard the opposing team's best player? Who's going to guard their opposing best point guard? Is it going to be Kyrie? Is it going to be PJ Washington? I think that's something that would hold him off the floor in the playoffs. And the second thing is, I said before Klay could come off the bench. Last year, the Warriors put him off the bench. And Riv, you saw in February. For 14 games, he came off and averaged 20. Amazing. He averaged 20 a game, shooting 42% from three. Do you guys think he starts?
I don't think he needs to. I think he probably, who is it? Luka, Kyrie, Lively, PJ, Klay, 3.
I would start him.
They're not going to have a POA defender regardless. Either of you start Najee anyway. So
you start Grimes.
Unless you start Grimes.
Grimes
after his shooting, I don't know if I'm starting Grimes.
I believe in his shooting playing alongside Luka.
I believe in his shooting off the bench. And if it gets better, then you can switch it. But it doesn't matter. I think Klay will start.
But this is the thing. It's like Dallas has to lean into something. And if you're going to lean into one thing, if your superstar is Luka Doncic, you got to lean into your offense. That's what's going to win you a championship with Luka Doncic being your guy. The defense, you have to get timely stops, but really what it is that you really have to surround Luka with offensive players.
I agree with that in the regular season, but in the playoffs, I think you gotta find the right balance of those two things.
You do. I mean, Najee Marshall could be in a closing lineup. He could even play in place of PJ Washington, and he can be the primary defender.
He's very similar physically.
Yeah, and he's a better shooter as well. At least off of last season, he was a much better shooter. Even though we'll see if he can continue that and keep that up. But the Dallas Mavericks got much better to me. And listen, I understand those concerns about Klay Thompson's defense, but I didn't see Klay Thompson on defense and think he's completely washed. I didn't see that.
Right, but I look at like the 2022 finals in game 2, the Celtics had, or I shouldn't say the Celtics, the Warriors had to put him on Al Horford, who cannot dribble with his off hands.
I
That
felt
way in
like
the corner,
Klay
he could hold
Thompson
up fine.
in the 2022 NBA Finals was great defensively.
He's going out Horford.
It was one. It was not. It was really one possession.
They had
I
to move
believe with
Draymond on it.
there was one possession with the game on the line where he completely strapped Jaylen Brown. I forgot what game that was, but he
Had a
completely.
couple good games.
Yo, he completely like it was a clutch possession. Completely strapped Jaylen Brown like on some different shit, yo. But obviously that's a couple years removed.
Facts. I think the perspective on all this though is what you mentioned at first, John, is the fact that they're not paying Klay Thompson much. And because of that, they can make it allows for more wiggle room, but also the expectations should drop. We shouldn't look at Klay as being a defensive stopper and a sharpshooter. I think if he just gives you
Above
the
average
sharpshooting,
defender.
that's fine. And average defense, I think that's fine for the price point that you're paying for. That's fine, but I love the move, and I feel like it makes them tremendously better, much better. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly summarize what you guys said, I definitely agree with that sentiment. I definitely believe Klay Thompson can still be a serviceable defender. Obviously not against shifty guards, but like just the defensive tactic that Boston trotted out there, leaving PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. away, like taking away the corner threes. It doesn't matter where Klay Thompson is on the court. He could be up on the top of the key, on the wing, any corner. He's a 39% three-point shooter. He did it on close to 10 attempts. That's a down year for Klay. He's a monster. And then another thing that people like are kind of forgetting, which is when I say this, you guys are gonna be like, oh shit, Luka Doncic wasn't 100% in the finals. It was obviously pretty really clear. Like the dude wasn't 100%. Obviously, it hampered him or whatever the case may be, but this Dallas team got better. If we can get a healthy Luka Doncic that's 100% and you replace Derrick Jones, whoever you want to say, Tim Hardaway, I don't give a shit. Whoever you want to say, you replace one of those guys with Klay Thompson, who's a sniper.
Yeah.
The same defensive tactics cannot be performed against Dallas. And Luka Doncic, I believe if he was healthy, if they match up again, if he's healthy, he get downhill more. Kyrie improved as a playmaker. He's a really underrated playmaker. Luka Doncic is a great playmaker. Klay Thompson can really be the difference maker. It doesn't matter if you take him from the corner, from the wing. It doesn't matter. He's one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. And I think that they have a high possibility to get back to the finals. One more thing, like Riv said, obviously we're envisioning Klay Thompson as a second scorer when he was with Golden State. Obviously he's not there anymore, but you pair him with two of the best ISO scorers and one elite level playmaker, another good playmaker. It's going to make his job much easier. It doesn't matter where you put him. I like it.
Klay Thompson, he met with the Mavericks with Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd and company, and he had a meeting with the Lakers, and that morning he canceled it and he said, "Nah, like I'm gonna be in Dallas. I want to play in Dallas."
Went to LA, it would have been an act of betrayal.
And this is why when we were doing our predictions on where we think Klay is gonna go, John, one of the names you mentioned was the Detroit Pistons. But I don't envision. I never.
What?
I wanted him on the Magic.
I never.
said
I
they'd
would
pay
like
him
that
the
too.
most money.
I never envisioned Klay Thompson as a loser, and he wasn't about to go to a losing situation.
Hell.
Even for the bag?
No.
Even for the bag,
Klay
it didn't
ain't doing
matter.
that.
For the bag?
Klay
He
Thompson
got
is
4
a winner
rings.
through
Who
and through.
cares?
Nah, Klay
Klay
not
Thompson
doing
is chasing that
Nah,
fifth
he
ring,
is, he is.
and he want to get it in Dallas.